What's going on, good people? So every time I see the intro video, man, Bray Wyatt at the end just kind of tugs at me a little bit, but it's all good. That just means the character, the person meant something, right? And it's all gravy. So it's your boy, Cool McCain, Play Call Sports Talk Show, Play Call Sports Productions, Equals Elite Podcast, all that good stuff. You know, so tonight we're gonna do what we call a truncated episode. Your boy gonna be Dolo, and that's all good. But we got a lot of things that we need to discuss in a short amount of time. So the best way for that to happen is let's dig into it. So y'all know we like to do things around here in the order that the shows come out. So of course, starting with Raw from last Monday. So sometimes Raws leading up to pay-per-views are really, really good, right? And sometimes the ones leading up, just okay. Sometimes it's teasers for things to happen. To me, the biggest story was, Judgment Day, of course, and that's made out to be that way. You had the situation with Jay coming to the ring with Mommy, all that happening. A couple of brawls. Um, we had the one to start the show with Nia Jackson, Shayna Baszler. Then we had the one that ended up between the Judgment Day and Jay, and then Cody came out to help him. So a lot of talking, a lot of things just kind of there because they needed to be there. And of course, this is when Dom did not have his belt. So he had lost his belt. Rhea came. She kind of went in on Damian Priest a little bit. And then Damian said, well, Dom is the one that doesn't have his belt, right? So he kind of got that a little bit. And that happened. And of course, we had the Imperium Alpha Academy match. I'm not going to talk about that. Looking for things that we really want to talk about, right? And Raw just didn't give you a lot from the actual matches. What Raw did give you was, some good interaction backstage between Chelsea Green, Tegan Knox, and everything. But you did get Drew McIntyre versus The Miz, and The Miz got that future shot DDT, and he did have his suit on. Then, of course, we had the Intercontinental Championship match with Gunther and Ciampa, and of course, Gunther won that match. So, I'll say there was a lot of segments, a lot of different things on Raw, but Raw didn't do a lot to really move forth many storylines that hadn't been done already. So it was more like continuations of things that already happened. And that's okay sometimes. I want Raw personally as a fan just to be more just good, man. Like it's not horrible, but it's like stagnant to me at a point. You get 3 hours of television, it's a lot of ads, a lot of advertising dollars. I get that, and there's nothing wrong with that. Got to make the money to spend the money. But the segments that Raw does have, they could be better. But from reports today, we could see a change, a positive shift in what's happening because, according to reports, Triple H has taken over as the head writer, and Vince McMahon was removed from that by TKO. So what that means for us is we get that old NXT black and gold blend first time. We get that booking and everything from when Triple H was running things before Vince sleaze his way back in. So I think it's big. I think we're going to start to see Raw pick back up. And with TKO trying to do everything they can to be successful for these new deals they have coming for the shows, this was the right move. So I'm looking tonight and moving forward to get more of what we were getting at one point with Raw, when Raw was starting to be good again. I think Triple H has a much better handle on what fans want and how to make things work in this era. And Vince is kind of stuck in the ways that he wants and the wrestlers that he wants, and those are not always what's best. So I hope that this turns out to be true. The sources I have, it should be, but just want to make sure and triple confirm everything and get those actual statements from WWE on those. But man, we can get Triple H back as the head writer and in charge of creative process, I think we're going to see a much better product. We were trending that way, so I'm excited about that. So then we move on to SmackDown, of course, and of course SmackDown we also have one group, because they're tag team champions, that can move between shows, and that would be the Judgment Day. SmackDown, kind of like Mortal Kombat, right? Stay those, but yeah. So you had the Bloodline Judgment Day. They had a good conversation. Rhea Ripley was talking about her and Paul Heyman were talking, and she decided to do it, and then she basically got into a situation where she was sitting in the room with Paul, and this was the best thing probably from SmackDown. She was sitting in the room with Paul, and she was saying, "Jay's already acknowledged me." And then Paul was like, I gotta get everything covered with the tribal chief. Ended up working out. They ended up having a tentative alliance, and it was good. I think it's a good tease, because at some point I think they're going to end up in some type of situation against each other. But we'll see how things go as we go forward. I'll talk to you about the pay-per-view, how I think it is looking like Damian Priest is what's going to end up out of the faction, but it might end up with him being champion as well. So I have a theory. So LA Knight comes out, little thing between LA Knight and your boy Jimmy Uso thinks he's the tribal chief, or the baby tribal chief, or whatever. So he's making a lot of decisions without Heyman, and that thing's going to backfire, because Roman Reigns was advertised he's going to be on SmackDown this week. So a lot of this other stuff is not going to be happening. So also on SmackDown, we saw Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits decimate the LWO. Right. So that was important and interesting, because you don't see factions get dominated by a threesome before, right? Basically, 4 guys got decimated by 2 guys, and 2 of them couldn't even compete. So Rey Mysterio had to make a phone call. Tell you later on who it was. Wasn't a surprise to me, but I'll tell you later on when we get to that. We also got the information that Triple H is going to be on SmackDown next week. So the biggest thing actually that came from the show was, of course, the brawl at the end with John Cena. And so you had the Judgment Day, and you had the Bloodline. Then you had John Cena, LA Knight, and then you ended up with Jimmy and Jay there. So they ended up kind of being like a little brawl at the end. So don't want to leave that out. But that's kind of where we were at with those. And there was a little altercation on Raw with them as well. But you know how that ends up. One other bit of information. Mommy did tell Dirty Don they better win the NXT North American Championship back, or don't bother to come back. And he won it back. Not going to talk about how it happened. He won it back. That's important. That sucks for Trick Williams. And this definitely felt like a Vince McMahon decision. If you're going to take the belt off of him, leave it off of him for a little bit, to take it off and then put it back on a few days later. So Vince McMahonish. But it could have been a Triple H idea, but it just reeks of Vince McMahon. So then we head over to Dynamite. Lots of interesting things on Dynamite. AW is really doing a little bit of a better job these days. I feel like of at least trying to get stories involved. And this was, of course, the fall from Wrestle Dream. So a lot of things happened at Wrestle Dream, right? So that was very interesting. We had Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega against Konosuke Takeshita, and it should have been Sammy Guevara, but he was hurt. He had to get a replacement partner, right? That replacement partner turned out being one half of Aussie Open. And when that happened, we're like, okay, we know who's going to take the pin, right? We kind of know who's going to take the pin. So we got exactly what we expected from that whole situation. Once that happened, forgot the name. Sorry, guys. Kyle Fletcher was the guy that did the replacement. We got revealed at the end of the match, after the match was over, even though they lost, that Powerhouse Hobbs, as ladies remember, of the Don Callis family. And he came out and he really gave it to them. Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega really got they had me down. No other way to put it. So I think Powerhouse Hobbs can be a monster within that faction and kind of rebuild himself up because they haven't really done a lot with him. So the only thing you have is really him being a big man slapping meat. So it's not a lot that goes on. There's a lot of things, but it's storylines. So I look for the storylines in AEW, and you sometimes have to go through a little bit to get that. I'm interested to see where this new timeless Tony Storm gimmick is going to go. But it is something to look forward to because you have to do something with Tony Storm, right? Bullet Club goal, all that good stuff, all that happens. The biggest thing to come from this is they took the belt from MJF, so MJF doesn't have his belt. That's the biggest thing to come from that. And then, of course, you had the Acclaimed scissoring everywhere with their scissor championships. They won a match against the Blade, Butcher, and Kip Sabian. So, when you talk about the shows, it's like, when you watch them, the presentation sometimes sucks you in, but actually watching, it's just not what it could be. Now, we will have MJF defending his championship at Full Gear, and he'll be doing that, of course, against the Switchblade Jay Wright. So that is something big you want to make sure that we keep in mind. There's some other little things you could talk about, but the biggest thing is we know what it is. Now, next week, for those of you who watch AEW Dynamite, it's going to be a Title Tuesday edition of AEW Dynamite. So you'll have AEW on Tuesday instead of Wednesday. There's a few matches that, as of Dynamite, if I remember correctly, that they had set up, and that was Adam Copeland versus Luchasaurus. So I'm just going to say the Rated R Superstar because I'll get his name wrong. Chris Jericho is going to go up against Powerhouse Hobbs. Saraya goes against Hikaru Shida. Adam Page versus Jay Wright. And then Bryan Danielson versus Swerve Strickland. Danielson versus Swerve Strickland is for the number one contender to the TNT Championship. So that'll be an interesting match because it feels like you're going to have something with Edge and Christian. Sorry, Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. But so you end the show with Adam Copeland has Christian come out, says he came back because he wanted to be his tag team partner and everything and blah, blah, blah. Christian hugs him and then says, bump you. So we understand that there's going to be some tension there, and that's what's going to drive everything to get crazy between the Rated R Superstar and Christian. So that's kind of a lot of Dynamite. I mean, we could go into more details, but again, we truncating things here. We getting it done. We moving. All right, so then we're going to go to Saturday Night's All Right for a Fight first, and then we're going to double back to the pay-per-view. All right, so we had Ricky Starks and Big Bill versus the FTR. Well, not the, but FTR for the AEW Tag Team Championships. So, pretty solid match. It looked like about a third of the way through the match that FTR was going to lose. And they did. They made FTR look like they just had gotten worn down. And they finally met that team that got them. They decisively beat FTR, so I think FTR is going to be taking a break for a little bit. I'm sure they'll be back for the championships at some point. But it was a good squash, actually, kind of match. You don't hear FTR being squashed much, but FTR got squashed. They got dominated physically. But I think you needed to do that if you were going to have Ricky Starks and Big Bill win. It did have to be that kind of match. Then another match I really liked was Bryan Danielson and Kyle Fletcher. Kyle Fletcher, of course, lost the match. And then Toa Leona and Bishop Khan from The Mogul Embassy attempted to attack Bryan Danielson after the match, but then, of course, the BCC came out. Danielson got the pin on Fletcher. Great match. It's one of those you have to watch. Nigel McGuinness does great when talking about Bryan Danielson. He kind of has a little personal thing. And a lot of highlights in the match, but it was great for the story point of this last year of wrestling for Bryan Danielson and him getting some of these matches that you really want to see him have, but he may not have had as of yet. Of course, we had Bullet Club Gold against Angelico, Metallic, and Gravity. I don't think I have to tell you who won that match. I think we were all clear that they were going to win the Bang Bang game, and that Juice Robinson was the one that gets the pin. So that was really good, and it was great back and forth. Like AEW, it's a much watch to me, so you can see the matches themselves because the matches are great. Sometimes the stories aren't, but the matches themselves are great. Another trios title match: the Acclaimed and Daddy Booty Cheeks versus Iron Savages, and of course, we know who won the match, right? We know who won the match. We have to get to the point, and I know we can't do this every week, but we got to start having some of these championship matches be matches that you feel like the champions can actually lose. Because we're having a lot of matches where we don't feel like the champions can lose. Didn't mention the Mid-Atlantic Championship match from Wednesday because we already knew who's going to win that match. We already knew. That's clear. And of course, this new Toni Storm character comes out, and she beats Kira Hogan, excuse me. And that's that. So Eddie Kingston, of course, every match that Eddie Kingston is in is a brutal match, right? If you're going to get in a match with Eddie Kingston, it's going to be a brutal match. They fought. He made Commander look really good. They meshed everything together and made this match really good. It was for the Ring of Honor World Championship. What I do like about the way that they did this, and I didn't go over Rampage because we're only going to do, 2 shows from each. But Rampage kind of set some of these things up, but it's so close to it that it still doesn't really allow for storyline development. If you're having a match Friday for someone to get a championship shot Saturday, come on, EW. We got to work on that. Bryan Danielson, I know you're working behind the scenes. You got to get on Tony Khan with that. Yeah, I got to make him understand that. But this was a great, I think, main event and a great highlight for Ring of Honor. I do believe that they need to do a Ring of Honor show and have them defend their belts on their show, have their roster on their show. They haven't done that yet because if you don't, I feel like you start to get to the point of you have everybody just with everybody. Then after that, of course, Adam Copeland came out, gave a promo, talked about what happened with Christian Cage. And then Christian Cage came and said, hey, you better watch out. You may not even make it. And then Luchasaurus and Nick Wayne came out to attack. Of course, he got choke slammed. Darby Allin came out to make the save. But then he got double teamed. He got beat up. And then that's basically how those things went. Danielson and Kyle Fletcher and Bryan Danielson definitely had the matches tonight. But so many other just small elements. It's definitely go watch. Trust me when I tell you, you want to watch it because it flows and it's good entertainment. Collision, a little bit strong on the storylines of Dynamite right now, but I think it's because you have Rampage kind of leading into Collision, kind of setting up some of the stuff for Collision. But they just need to do better. To me, AEW just got to do better at the storyline part. Give us reasons for people to fight. Dig it up from the past, start a beat. Just give us reasons. A lot of times we're looking at it and it's like, what's happening? But just give us reasons to enjoy it because we want to enjoy it. There's no doubt about it. We want to enjoy it. We want to watch AEW. The wrestling itself is fun. The stories told during the match are good, but it's that overarching storytelling that we're going to need a little bit more, just a little bit more, tad bit more from AEW. They work on that, man. I think AEW's product goes up, and they were having some of that. And I'm not saying just because I'm a Cody fan, but I feel like when Cody was there, those things were happening. Now that Cody's gone, it's kind of like, is it happening? The answer is no, it's not happening. So you got to get back to doing the things that made the show great in the beginning. Storylines. Storylines were a big part of AEW in the beginning. They were. But as a lot of people said, and those who are anti AEW, their first thought was the reason is simply because of Cody. But I don't think that's it. I just think Tony Khan's trying to go in a different direction. It may not be the best direction. It's not always the best direction, the one that you choose to go in. But I do applaud Tony Khan for doing something different. Now, to finish up our reviews for the week, we're going to take the time to go through the card for Fastlane. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, I said for Fastlane. So we have some matches that were planned. We'll get some stuff going here. So we had the undisputed WWE Tag Team Championship match. You had the Judgment Day, Damian Priest and Finn Balor versus Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. So I saw this match. I'm thinking to myself beforehand, you got Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso going against the Judgment Day. It feels like Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso are going to win because this gives them both a chance to start furthering agendas on SmackDown that they can go to now. My hope is simply that they won't do it every week. I hope it won't be like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens in a Judgment Day. We don't need Cody and Jay there every week, but it is good for them to be able to have that option and go there sometimes. I'd like to see during this reign them split the championships, put a set on SmackDown, put a set on Raw, or make one set of belts. Either or, whichever way they want to do it. So, any other match, Damian Priest gets hit in the leg with the briefcase because JD McDonough does it, in the knee. And then Rose gets the crossroads on the desk on Priest. And then Uso and Rose modified 1D. Not Crossroads, Cody Cutter for the victory. So Cody and Jay are the new undisputed tag team champions. Judgment Day are now back only on Raw. So I guess that kind of puts the end the merger or the combining forces angle after a couple of weeks. Did it take long for that? So then we get to the LWO versus Lashley and Street Profits match. Very simple for that. You saw Lashley and the Street Profits do their thing. Handicap match, they did their thing. But once Santos Escobar was not there to help Rey Mysterio, Carlito ran to the ring, got a tag from Rey Mysterio, hit a backstabber on Montez Ford, and pinned him. I think it's the wrong ending because I think that Lashley and the Profits should have won. But I think they're going to get their win back today. Or, well, not today, but on Friday. I think they're going to get their win back on Friday in a one-on-one match between Ford and Carlito. But it would have been okay for LWO to lose the match and then the Street Profits to win the match. Our match leads to Bobby getting his United States Championship, or maybe Ford gets his first shot at a singles championship. We'll see how things play out. It's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do with this new group. And if they're going to have a guy like Wes Lee maybe added to this group, maybe they're going to have a guy like him added to this group. I don't think Trick Willie's going to be added too soon for him, but there's a couple of options out there. All right, then you had the WWE Women's Championship match, Io Sky versus Asuka versus Charlotte Flair. Asuka comes out. The Miz right Charlotte from the beginning. She basically gets Flair in position to beat her, but then Flair got Asuka in the figure eight. Let's set that backwards, sorry, and was looking for a win, but Bailey distracted the referee, so the referee did not see Asuka tap out. Io Sky didn't hit her moonsault on Flair and got the win. It was a good match. One kind of central point now, but I do want them to add some other layers to it. But I do like how they're highlighting one specific thing that has notable names and acknowledgeable people in it for the females on SmackDown. So that's good in a way, but still bad in a way as well. All right, and then we have John Cena and LA Knight versus the Bloodline. This was one of those. Cena was the fighter, and he had this long time we didn't get in. Finally got the hot tag, and then once that happened, LA Knight came in, won a match with a BFT, and of course, Jimmy was the one that took the loss. Roman Reigns is coming back. Jimmy's been running around like he run the Bloodline, but he's getting beat up every week. He's not winning matches. So I'm curious as to what your tribal chief has to say about that when he comes back this week, finally. All right, then of course we have Seth Rollins versus Shinsuke Nakamura, last man standing. Am I the only one that already knew the outcome of this match when it was made? It was clear from the very beginning they're not going to put that belt on Shinsuke Nakamura. They should, but this whole rivalry told you they wouldn't do it. Because if you were going to put the belt on Shinsuke, why does Shinsuke keep taking L's? All right, so we got a few comments here. So AP was going on, man, and they still didn't slip the tag team belts. True. And they just won't split them, man. They won't split them. AP also says add a female to the Hurt Business. So, A Puzzle, completely agree. We talked about it a couple of shows ago. I think for the Hurt Business, the females options obviously have Bianca Belair or whatever they're going to call this Hurt Business 2.0 or whatever. The other option that you always have to add someone is you've got a female coming whose attitude will fit very well in the Hurt Business. Jade Cargill. One of those two options, or maybe both, would be good for, I think, the Hurt Business. But hey, it's wild, it's crazy. I love it. You gotta love it, because if you don't love it, what's the point of watching? But speaking of Jade Cargill, it's going to be interesting to have Jade Cargill in WWE. And two things about that. First of all, we know with this pay-per-view, she came with this premium live event. She came in pre-show in her wrestling gear. Hello, Triple H. Hello, Jade Cargill. See anything else about her. But she was there in her wrestling gear. So that kind of forebode that maybe she would get physical, but I didn't see it happen. We know that Kairi Sane has re-signed with WWE. She just finished her last outside of WWE events here, I believe, this past weekend. So she'll be back soon. Brian Pillman Jr. is signed. And there's reports that there may be some other people, but we're going to wait until we get the clarification before we report any of those. Got to make sure we're legit. So, on our truncated episode, a couple more things to talk about here. So, there's a question I was going to pose to everyone, and we may ask this question again next week when the others are able to be on as well, but I'm going to take my time and answer it for you right now. So the question that was posed was, is it wiser for AEW to sign established stars or build new ones? Or which one should they do more often? So I'll give you my opinion. I read some articles on this, thought about it myself. I think it is smart for AEW to go out and get some of these guys that were with like WWE or even like Impact, New Japan that are known, and maybe bring them to a new audience here in America, but they already have some fans. And the reason being, it's very hard to make new stars. See, WWE can afford to try to make a new star and it fails and they just keep on moving on to somebody else. AEW needs those guys at the top that can hit. They need the guys to bring in ratings. They need the guys to keep people that may not know about AEW or have certain wrestlers that they like. If they can get those wrestlers and get those fans watching, AEW can help grow their product. So I would say that for me, I would go with the established star some, but at the same time, homegrown talent has to uh, prevail as well. Perfect example. I didn't talk about this on Collision. Wardlow. Wardlow's back, a little bit more of a mean street. Arn Anderson is kind of like a reboot for his character, and hopefully they capitalize on him this time because this man knows how to wrestle. Great look, great size, athleticism, but they just got to get him in somewhere where they use the skill set that he has properly. That hasn't been done yet, but hopefully it will happen. So we're gonna see what rolls out with Wardlow. I mean, he needs to have that. I think Jade Cargill is another example. I think it was a great idea for her to go to WWE because they'll make her a star, right? If you know Jade Cargill, you know her, you're a fan of hers, you're a fan of hers. But seeing her in WWE, that's going to make even more people draw to her and her brand and what it is that she's doing. So it's always a good idea if you have an opportunity that you go out and you make it happen. If you're in AEW and you have the opportunity to get the machine is the WWE behind you, why not do it? And let's keep in mind, Cody's there, and Cody was big in Jade coming to AEW to begin with. They're pretty close, so that had to play a role as well in her being able to make that move. So congratulations to her. I can't wait to see what they do with her and how they properly use her. But I wanted to hop back before I finish that conversation. I'm a little scatterbrained today. That's how I work sometimes. Nakamura and Rollins beat the living daylights out of each other. Right? After the match, Damian Priest had the storyline, the injury, but why didn't he limp out with Judgment Day, beat Seth Rollins down, and win a championship? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm curious as to what they're going to do with Damian Priest. At some point, he's supposed to cash in. After Last Man Standing match, double thing. Seth Rollins wins match against Shinsuke, but then comes out and gets brutalized more by Damian Priest and Judgment Day. Then Damian Priest pins him and gets the championship. But they didn't pull the trigger on it today. They took the most obvious time and didn't do it. So that's one questionable thing with WWE. But for the most part, I feel like they do a good job. All right, so back to what I was discussing here with the stars. I think AEW, they have some guys that need to work on building up. But I think when you're bringing in guys from scratch, guys that most people don't know, you're better off going to WWE because they can put the hype train behind you. They can have you on shows. They can have you stretched out over 3 different shows, talking about how you're coming and all these different things, vignettes, and they know how to do those things well. So I think that's the place you build newer stars. But AEW can get guys over as well by using some of these guys that you're bringing in. You're bringing in guys like the Radar Superstar. You got Christian Cage over there. You have RVD there a couple of weeks ago, and the list goes on, right? Use those guys to help the next set of guys. You need the veterans. You need those guys that can turn into agents in a couple of years, those guys that can help you build a brand. So you have some of those guys there, so they just need to use them correctly. But it is wise to get those veterans to help those younger guys that may have come from indies, may have come from small promotions and don't really understand how to perform on this level, having those guys there to help mentor and get those guys prepared for that. But Brian Pillman Jr., his signing with WWE, I like that as well because I think they're going to turn him into a star. He'll probably have a more on edge character than his Varsity Blondes character in AEW. But we're all looking and we're all seeing. So for me, the thing that excites me the most is that we're getting into that time of year where we're going to start having different things. We got Crown Jewel coming in. Got notification about Crown Jewel. So be ready for Crown Jewel. That's coming. Some things could happen there. This is going to be an interesting week on Raw with the fallout, as well as on SmackDown with the return of the Tribal Chief. What's going to happen with Judgment Day now they lost the tag team titles? Mommy is not going to be happy, and Mommy has turned into, as I've been saying, the de facto leader of the Judgment Day. I do think that Damian Priest ends up getting kicked out or quitting, and then JD McDonough moves into the Judgment Day. That's a weaker version of the Judgment Day, but I do think that that's where it's going. I could be mistaken, but that feels like it. They did tease some tension with Dominic, so maybe it's going to be Dominic. Someone I think is going to be out soon. So we'll see how they end up playing out. It all depends on how they go with angles and what they want to do. I will say WWE needs to do some rehashing. We need a new Intercontinental Champion now. Gunther has the record. Cool, that's what's up. It's time to put that belt on someone else and use it to catapult them. That's what it is. This next person can get a big rub off of being champion. I'm curious as to who it should be. It should not be an established guy unless it's going to be somebody like a Cody or somebody who he already has a championship now, or like Jey Uso. Jey Uso beating him for it, and that being his first individual championship would just catapult him further up the main event. So somebody like that, or someone that needs that rub, that would be a good idea. But these guys have already had championships multiple times. If one of those guys beats Gunther, I'm going to be ticked off. Chad Gable, that's another one that would be a good victory for Gunther, to beat Gunther, but he's had a couple of matches and couldn't get the job done. On the AEW side, there's the TNT Championship, Mid-Atlantic Championship, Trios Championships, Ring of Honor Championship, Ring of Honor Pure Championship, AEW Championship, TNT Championship, TBS Championship for the women, Women's World Championship. It's a lot of belts. Mid-Atlantic Championship, so it's a lot. So I just say if you're going to have a belt, you want to be able to do like Orange Cassidy and defend it for a long time. Put something in place so it helps the belt have a strong beginning legacy or a legacy while you're carrying it. So I think the AEW is kind of starting to understand that. But again, because of the injury to Moxley, they kind of had to get rid of the I don't think Moxley was supposed to lose that match, but because of the injury, he had to. Put the stories together, make these things good. That's what you can do, and you can be great at it. You just got to take the time. All right, so, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, it's going to be a little bit of a truncated episode. We dropped it for 40 minutes or so. So, good people, we appreciate you watching. Make sure you hop in with us next week. We'll be able to talk a little bit more. We still may go over some of this fast lane stuff again once we have the guys and gals here, so kind of dig into it a little bit more. But for the squad, this is your boy Cool McCain. Tonight I was the Monarch of Wrestling. Make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe to get information. But before we go, a couple things for you to ponder and pay attention to for a few moments.
This is and you're watching Shady Sports Network. Tune in, hit that like button.
You might wonder, what do these guys do? Player signing announcements. I never in a million years thought you would actually come on to break this news. So without further ado, go ahead and tell everybody what happened today.
Yeah, man. I just had to work out with the Cincinnati Bengals. Signing me right out.
Without further ado, I'd like to announce that, I'll be taking my talents to Salina Liberty.
This just in, the Major League of Football is reportedly collapsing, unable to pay hotel room bills, with players being kicked out of their rooms and hotel managers asking them to leave voluntarily without issue.
Hey, Eagles fan. Join my man Cool McCain and a host of others as they break down every single game, every single week in an objective manner, and also from a fan's perspective as well. Remember, this cast feels just like you. Nobody likes you. And you don't care. Fly, Eagles, fly. Eagles Elite Podcast, every Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on YouTube and other podcast outlets.
So, good people, with that being said, there's only one thing I need to say. Make sure you tell 2 of your friends and 4 of your enemies to come check us out. Because just because they don't like you doesn't mean they won't like us. Y'all, catch you back next week.